everyone, Piscean here. In this video, we are going to go over the chicken noodle soup for the Astrologically Ponderous Soul compendium. These are stories to warm the cosmically overthinking heart. And I came up with this idea because I just wanted to do something new, something different. And I think that's what I go for in most of my videos, is helping you guys learn astrology for free in multiple different ways, even though I get no views. I have my own theories as to why that is, but anyways, let's get started with this video. Because we're going to talk about a few different things. I'm going to read some stories, and these are going to help you actually understand astrology in more detail. So, I'm going to do a forward on reading too much into things, 12 signs, 12 turning points. Aries, the client who wouldn't wait for Mercury. Taurus, the slowest yes I ever gave. Gemini, both of me at the reunion. Cancer, the soup my grandmother actually made. Leo, what I learned applauding for somebody else, or for someone else. Virgo, the junk drawer I finally opened. Libra, how we split the last word. Scorpio, the grudge I finally composted. Sagittarius, a one-way ticket purchased at midnight. Capricorn, the promotion I turned down on purpose. Aquarius, the committee of one. Pisces, what the dream was actually telling me. And there's going to be an afterword. Your chart was never the point. So this video is not going to be too very long, but I just wanted to make this, like I said, because I had the idea. So, forward, before we get into everything, every story in this volume was submitted by a real ponderous person who at some difficult hour looked up instead of down and found, if not an answer, at least good company. We've organized these stories by sun sign, though several contributors instead insisted it was really the rising sign that did the difficult part, and one insisted it was actually our Mercury. What you will find here is not astrology as prediction, but astrology as permission. Permission to notice a pattern in yourself, forgive it a little, and keep going anyway. Read one story a night, preferably with a warm bowl of something nearby. Actual soup entirely optional. Several contributors specify this was the middle of a grocery run and not, in fact, a night sky at all. The editors have chosen not to litigate this. Okay, so first, the client who wouldn't wait for Mercury, Aries, on impatience and the cost of going first. I run a small design studio, and for years I blamed every rushed, regrettable email on whatever planet was supposedly in retrograde that week. It was never my fault. It was disguised. Then a client called out a mistake I'd made, sent the wrong file, snapped at someone for asking a fair question, and I opened my mouth to explain the planetary weather and stopped. The truth was simpler. I like going first, and going first means sometimes going wrong. I apologized without an asterisk attached. It was the first time an apology of mine had actually landed, because for once I wasn't handing the other person a chart to read instead of an answer. I still move fast. I've just stopped pretending the planets are holding the wheel. Submitted by studio owner in Austin, Texas. Mercury wasn't even retrograde that week. I checked afterward out of morbid curiosity. My business partner, a Libra, says this took me 11 years and one uncomfortable Tuesday. She's not wrong. Taurus. The slowest yes I ever gave on patience mistaken for stubbornness. So my family teases me for taking 4 months to choose a couch. I used to be embarrassed by this until a friend, only half-joking, told me it was very Taurus of me, and something in that small permission let me stop apologizing for my own pace. The real test came when I was offered a job I'd wanted for years, on the condition I decide within 48 hours. Everyone told me to jump. I sat with it and instead slept on it twice and turned it down. Not out of fear, but because 2 days of sitting quietly with the decision told me something a week of enthusiasm couldn't. I still don't decide quickly, I've just kept calling it a flaw. Submitted by a landscape architect in Asheville, North Carolina. The couch, for the record, it was correct. It is still correct 6 years later. Taurus rising, stand up if that hit close to home. Gemini, both of me at the reunion. I'm being told we're so different depending on who's asking. At my 10-year reunion, 3 separate people told me I seemed so different from how they remembered me, and each of them meant it as a compliment about a completely different person. For a long time, that used to worry me. Which one was the real me? Standing in that gym under fluorescent lights, I finally let the question go. I am the version of me that shows up to conversation about grief and the version that shows up to karaoke, and I no longer think one of them is a costume the other one wears. The twins on my birth chart, it turns out, were never a contradiction to resolve. They were just roommates I hadn't introduced to each other yet. Submitted by a high school teacher in Providence, Rhode Island, she did in fact do karaoke immediately after this realization. Total eclipse of the heart, if it matters. Cancer. And the soup my grandmother actually made me on the comfort that started this whole series. This book is named for chicken soup, so it feels only right that a Cancer gets to tell you about actual soup once. My grandmother made hers with whatever was left in the refrigerator on a Sunday, and it never tasted the same way twice. And I used to find that inconsistency frustrating as a child who wanted a recipe to memorize. It took losing her to understand that the inconsistency was the recipe, that she was making a different soup for whoever was at the table that week, tired or celebrating or simply cold. I don't have her exact measurements. I have learned slowly to make soup for the person in front of me instead, and stop asking it to be identical to hers. Submitted by a hospice nurse in Portland, Maine, the editors would like it on record that this is the only story in the volume that mentions actual soup, and we are grateful for it. And I also want to mention really quick, these stories are also correlating with the houses and astrology. So the story about the first house, which is Aries, not for everybody, of course. I'm just saying in general the archetypes. So Taurus is the second sign, stubborn and wealth. Gemini, the third of communication, and Cancer, the fourth of roots, your family. And now we're on to Leo. What I learned applauding for someone else, the natural fifth house. We're on wanting the spotlight and giving it away on purpose. I've never had trouble wanting to be seen. The harder skill, it turned out, was standing in the audience while someone else was seen instead. My younger sister won an award I quietly hoped might be mine one day, and I felt for about 4 seconds genuinely awful about it. Then I watched her face when she heard her name, and something in me reorganized. I clapped until my hands hurt. I have since learned that the warmth I get from being watched is real, but it is a smaller, colder thing than the warmth of watching someone else get exactly what they wanted. I still like the spotlight. I've just found a second one worth standing in. Submitted by a theater teacher in Chicago, Illinois. 4 seconds is generous. Her sister reviewing the story insisted it was closer to 11. The natural sixth house, Virgo. The junk drawer I finally opened. And you know what's so funny? My mom always said she had a junk drawer and she just had a bunch of random stuff in it, for real, like tape and paper clips, just random nonsense stuff. And that's very Virgo rising, Virgo moon, Virgo sun. It gets cluttery. So the junk drawer I finally opened on the difference between order and control. Everyone assumes I keep a tidy house because I'm calm about chaos. The truth is closer to the opposite. I alphabetize because it is the one thing I can make behave. I alphabetize because it's the only one thing I can make behave. During a hard year, I found myself reorganizing the same spice rack 4 times in a month, and a friend finally asked gently what I was actually trying to fix. I didn't have an answer, so I opened the junk drawer instead, the one drawer in my apartment I had never once sorted, and left it exactly as messy as I found it. It is still messy. It has become oddly my favorite thing in the kitchen. Proof that I can tolerate one small, unresolved thing without the whole system collapsing. Submitted by an accountant in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the spice rack, we're told, remains alphabetized. Some things are worth keeping. The natural seventh house, Libra, how we split the last word on fairness, taken one negotiation too far. My husband and I once spent 20 minutes deciding out loud whose turn it was to pick the restaurant, because I was so determined that neither of us felt or feel shortchanged that I made us both miserable in the meantime. It was he, not especially known for patience, who finally said, "You can just want something, you don't have to make it fair first." I've thought about that sentence more than almost anything else anyone has said to me. Balance, I've realized, was never supposed to mean measuring every exchange down to the gram. Some nights someone just picks the restaurant and it turns out to even out anyway on its own without me holding the scale. Submitted by a mediator in Savannah, Georgia. They got Thai food. Neither of them notably had suggested Thai food during the original 20 minutes. The natural 8th house, Scorpio. The grudge I finally composted on holding on and what it actually cost. I kept a mental file for nearly a decade on a friend who had hurt me badly in my 20s. I could recite the offense with total precision on demand, which I told myself was clarity and which was more honestly just weight I kept agreeing to carry. We ran into each other at a mutual friend's wedding and she apologized. unprompted in a hallway for something I hadn't realized she remembered at all. I said it's fine and meant for the first time something close to it. I didn't forget what happened. I just finally set the file down. It turns out I had been guarding an old wound so fiercely that I forgot to notice it had already closed. Submitted by a park ranger in Missoula, Montana. She reports the file is, as of this printing, still technically open, but mostly for the record, not for the feeling. The natural night tells. Sagittarius. A one-way ticket purchased at midnight on the leap and what waits on the other side of it. I booked a flight to a country I'd never visited alone on 6 weeks' notice and told exactly 2 people before I left. Everyone else's advice, had I asked for it, would have been reasonable and would have talked me out of it. I don't regret the leap. What surprised me was what came after the leap. 3 months in, homesick in a way I hadn't planned for, I learned that the wandering wasn't actually the point. The point was coming home, changed, and having somewhere and someone worth coming home to. I still buy the impulsive ticket. I've just started leaving a slightly better note for the people I love before I go. Reminds me of one of my favorite Tracy Chapman songs, She's Got Her Ticket, on her self-titled album, submitted by a photojournalist based in Denver, Colorado. This entry, the 2 people told in advance were her mother and reportedly her downstairs neighbor, who was asked to water a plant. The natural 10th house, Capricorn. The promotion I turned down on purpose, on ambition redirected instead of abandoned. I had been climbing toward one specific title since I was 22. When it was finally offered to me, I said no and shocked everyone who had watched me want it for a decade. The job would have meant relocating away from my father during the year he needed help most, and I realized turning it over at 2 a.m. that the ambition I'd been so proud of was only ever in service of building a life sturdy enough to hold the people in it, not a summit to plant a flag on alone. I took a smaller role near home instead. I still work harder than almost anyone I know. I've just gotten pickier about what the work is for. Submitted by a structural engineer in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The title was eventually offered again 2 years later. She took it that time from a difference of 11 miles instead of 2,000. The natural 11th house. Aquarius, the committee of one, unbelonging to everyone and to no one in particular. I have always had a wide circle, and if I'm honest, no single person who could tell you what I actually needed on a bad day, because I made sure no one had to carry that alone. A friend finally called this what it was, not independence, but a kind of hiding in plain sight, spread thin enough across enough people that no one ever saw the whole picture. I let one person see it on purpose for the first time in my adult life. It felt like losing a layer of skin. It also eventually felt like the opposite of alone. I still believe in the wide circle. I've just learned to let 1 or 2 people stand a little closer than the rest. Submitted by a nonprofit director in Burlington, Vermont. The friendly question is, unsurprisingly to anyone who knows her, a Cancer. And we see Pisces, which is the natural 12th. What the dream was actually telling me, on listening to the quiet, unlikely signal. For a month before I finally left a job that was quietly wearing me down, I had the same dream almost nightly, standing in a house with no doors, only windows. I mentioned it to my sister, who's considerably more literal-minded than I am, and she said, not unkindly, maybe you just need to leave the building. I laughed, and then I didn't. 2 weeks later, I gave notice. I don't know if the dream meant anything at all in the cosmic sense, and I decided that isn't really the question that matters. It got my attention when nothing else had. Sometimes the message doesn't need to be true. It just needs to be loud enough to make you finally look at the thing you already knew. Submitted by a music therapist in Eugene, Oregon. The dream notably did not recur after she gave notice. Make of that what you will. The editors certainly have. And we will end the video with an afterword. When I say we in any of my videos, I mean me. So essentially, your chart was never the point. It was only a way in. A shared vocabulary for the parts of yourself that are harder to name directly. If a placement gave you permission to forgive yourself for being exactly the way you are, it did its whole job. Thank you for watching this video. Keep something warm on the stove and keep looking up on the ordinary nights as much as the hard ones. With peace and love, I'll see you in the next video. Piscean out.